And welcome back to episode 12 of the New Generation Challenge podcast's recap for season 40, Battle of the Eras. We're your hosts. My name is Brett Parnell,
And I'm Titi Fernandez.
and excited to get back into this. We have really a lot of stuff happening this week, Titi. Mini final that happens to be a purge in the same episode. It was great.
Yeah, I remember last week when we saw the preview, I was very excited for this episode, and I think it did not disappoint in my opinion. But yeah, like you said, there was just a lot going on for sure.
All right, so let's get into the episode right from the beginning. And we see, first of all, Michele comes into the house again after winning her second elimination, this time against Naya. Always a fun moment for you and I when that happens.
Yeah, and you could see how happy she was, and even Jenny was giving her props. And we know her and Jenny aren't the best of friends. So I think people know that she's a really good competitor and she's really a threat in a final. And it's good to see that the whole house is also happy for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't agree more. The next, I guess, main thing that comes up here is that we notice that after the Super Mario Challenge, or at least that's what I'll call it, Aviv says that she was injured. And how is she's saying hopefully it's not a running challenge. We all know from the preview that it's a mini final. So
Hmm.
how that is going to end for her does not seem to put her in a good spot going into this purge that they don't even know is a purge yet.
Yeah, and I mean, I had never heard of plantar fasciitis. Well, I mean, I have, but I've never heard of somebody getting it. But I know, like, at least myself, when I've been like running or something, I've felt like a stretch and that hurts a lot. So I
Yeah,
can't imagine how much pain she has to be in when it's constant and obviously gets worse with exercise. So I empathize with her a lot because we know that she's a fighter. She's gonna play to win, but at the same time, she's in a lot of pain because of her injury.
absolutely. And then going on from there, um, I mean, we're at this point almost pretty much ready to get up to the deli. Is there anything that'll be the main part of this episode, obviously? Anything you want to cover before we go in there?
So we see kind of the whys for some people. We see Johnny is kind of explaining that he's there for his dad. Laurel has a segment on being a vet and how she cares for animals, which it's always interesting to see how like why these people are there and who they are fighting for. And like we seen Laurel is she talked about not having any debt after being in vet school.
Yeah,
But we also see this interesting segment where Jordan talks about how Johnny is not the type of person that wants to go in against the best. And like, I mean, I would, if I was in a final, I want to go against the people that can't run.
yeah,
You know, I want to go in
absolutely.
against Big Easy. But and Jordan also is talking about how even though he just won the world championships, he wants to get another win. And he says that with a fifth win, he would be on the same boat as CT. And I think we briefly talked about this in this podcast, but I really think that if Jordan were to get a win this season, he would be considered the GOAT over CT because
Yeah,
he's done half as many seasons and won the same amount.
I would agree. And I
Um,
mean, I only started watching the show a few years ago, but
mhm.
that I didn't really, at least when I started to pick up the who's who of the challenge, thought that anybody was on the same level as CT. And now it looks like Jordan could be, whether it's this season, whether it's maybe 1, 2 seasons from now, about to pass him.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Because I mean,
what
I totally no disrespect to CT, he's a legend of this game, but we've seen this season, we've seen him as a mercenary last season. I don't think CT's winning anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to, because we've seen CT on like War of the Worlds 2 and stuff where he comes in out of shape and just takes the season to get in shape. And then when he's in shape, there's like the only person that I could see him or somebody beating him in a final is Jordan, which he already
Yeah,
did in was it Dirty 30? I think it
Yeah,
was Jordan got first, Derek got second, and CT got third.
that's right.
But I think CT is, if he were to get in shape before the season, I truly think that it would be a battleground between the both of them because in a final, I would take Jordan, but in an elimination, it all depends on everything because I think CT is somebody that he's just good at everything. So he has the puzzles, the math, the strength, the endurance, all those things. But in an elimination, if it's a physical elimination, like a pole wrestle between Fessy and Jordan, we saw how that
Yeah,
ended. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that Jordan, if he were to get another win, we would have to see if he even makes it to the final. Just see how the public also reacts to that comparison of those people.
true. All
But
right, so
yeah, I was
moving
gonna say I don't
in,
have anything else.
sounds good. Moving into at least what we think is the daily challenge. Players are worried about it being a guy's day. We see Rachel say she doesn't really care about winning because girls aren't going home. Think again. um, we find out that there is both it's a mini final and a purge for one player of each gender, but we're still going to have an elimination after this. So 3 players are going to be out of this game by the end of the episode. And that, I think, really takes us this week from the mid-range point of the game to, okay, you are almost there. Figure out how to get into the top 3, the top 4, the top 5, and run the final.
Yeah, and TJ tells us that the challenge, like you said, is a purge, but also if you're the last place male and the female's going to get a disadvantage, but the last or the second to last male and female, male's going into elimination, the female has a disadvantage in the next daily. But TJ tells us that the challenge is called Doomed, and players must just through different checkpoints, and they start off with a key checkpoint, then some paddle boards and then the memory game, which we'll talk about more extensively later. But they basically just have to race to the finish line, and after they get through all the checkpoints, when I saw TJ explain everything, I really thought that this is the mini final from hell.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is that they're in Vietnam in the peak of the summer in the
Yep.
heat. And we've just seen how, like, we saw Michele get a
I've
heat
been in
stroke. Like,
Thailand at that time of year, seeing they were filming this in April and May.
is it
And
really?
I was um basically, if you want to go see Buddhist temples, not doing anything physical, just looking at the history of the country, you go and visit the sites at like 9, 10 a.m. So that way in the peak of the day you can just chill at the pool because it's too hot.
See, I was in Portugal in July and I thought it was hell. Like,
Yeah.
I did not want to go outside unless the ocean was in front of me. But
Yeah, in
yeah,
Thailand, I don't know what it gets up to for the audience in Fahrenheit, but it was like 41, 42 degrees Celsius at this point of time.
yeah, I don't know what that means. But
I'll find it on Google.
But yeah, basically you're sweaty, you're sandy, you're sticky. Like I could not imagine how much like how horrible it would be to be sweating when you're covered in sand. And like it's not like you can like wash it off, you know? So like your legs are probably like chafing, like the
Yeah,
sand rubbing between them. It just looked awful.
it did it ever. I just looked it up. When I was in Thailand, it was 106 for the American audience. So
Oh
the
my
look on
God.
your face just
I
says
thought
it.
90. I thought 90 was bad. 88. Oh my God, no. Yeah.
And that's about, well, I was there in 2019, but that's about the same time of year that this season is being filmed. And Southeast Asian countries are all so close together that the climate between South Vietnam and Bangkok would be very similar.
Yeah.
You're probably a 6, 7 hour bus ride between the filming location and where I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But
And
we
fun fact,
also,
just
oh,
in
sorry.
terms of adapting to the weather, and yes, we saw her struggle with it last week, but not only are you that close to where I'm talking about from experience, but where they're filming you, maybe only a like 2.5, 3 hour drive to the ferry docks in Chinookville, Cambodia, which goes to where Michele won Survivor.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. That's
So
pretty cool,
she's
though.
put up with this environment for 39 days with no food, whereas probably very few of these people have any experience with it, seeing most seasons of late have been in Europe.
Yeah, and also 39 days outdoors.
Yeah,
We see people talking about the porta potties and whatever, but Michelle has experience just
way
living
worse.
outside. But anyways, we got TJ tells us that Theo's penalty is just he has to start 2 minutes later. And we end up seeing that this doesn't really make a difference because the first checkpoint is just digging until you find a key. And he was able to get out before a lot of people. So it wasn't a bad penalty for him.
Yeah. Um, Seeing that it's one of those things that it's like if you lose by a minute, it can be horrible. But seeing that this is a mini final that took the winners just over an hour and the people who just got made it about 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
it's there's enough of a gap that it shouldn't matter that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think this, like, if I had to get a penalty, it would probably be this one just because digging the keys is just a luck of the draw.
Yeah,
Like, you have no way of knowing if that's where TJ put the keys, so you're just kind of digging until you see something come out. But yeah, I think the penalty, this one wasn't too bad, but I think it would have been worse if it was like he had to do extra things on the memory game or something
yeah,
like that. But yeah, in the first checkpoint, we see that Rachel kind of talks about how if Bananas loses, it may not be the worst thing for her game because if he goes into elimination, he's not going to pick her as a target.
yeah,
So I thought that was pretty interesting that she, again, was just thinking ahead and being very smart with the game. Like, obviously, he's her ally, but if he loses, she knows that he's not going to pick her.
exactly. And the same is almost the complete opposite, where like if say Kylan or Josh was to come second last but still win the elimination, then Rachel is in a lot of trouble looking at down at
Hmm.
maybe a Loyal, maybe Aviv, maybe Jenny.
But you also have to remember that Josh is Banana's puppet.
We're
So,
we're gonna go into that at the end of the episode.
and then I think you had something about bananas on the first
Yeah,
checkpoint.
bananas cannot, and I think this is kind of gonna be my theme of this whole episode, and it's pretty simple. Grow the fuck up, bananas. um, saying, "Oh, sorry," no, you were trying to throw sand into Michelle's hole,
Yeah.
and we've seen this before. He's been on OTV at this point for like since he was 20, and he's 44.
And Michelle is a better person than me because if somebody threw sand at me or in my hole or whatever, I would start throwing it at them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Thankfully, she knew to just like call him
ignore it.
out, and then once she did, he just looked so foolish in front of the cameras
Hmm.
that it um he stopped doing it.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, if I was Michelle in that situation, I wouldn't even say anything. I would just start throwing sand at him and then just be like, "Oh, you can't see, so then I guess you can't." But yeah, that was pretty interesting. But we see Bananas is the first person to get to the second checkpoint, and the second checkpoint was the paddle
Paddle
boarding
boating.
portion. We didn't see too much on the paddle
No,
boarding stuff.
I would imagine just based on what we did see and knowing the geography of the area that it probably wasn't very long.
They
And
said
that
1 mile.
interesting. So then it's longer than I thought. If it,
Yeah, but like I've paddle boarded a lot, or it's more of a kayak. I don't know why they call it paddle board because they were sitting down. But I've paddle or kayaked a lot before.
yeah,
It's not bad.
no,
It really isn't. And it gives your legs a break,
yeah,
which I
very true.
think is like a good thing because if you're running, obviously you're using your leg muscles more than your arms, and just giving your legs a break and being able to take a breather, I think that's why they probably didn't show much of it, just because it was not very hard for people.
Yeah,
At least the people
exactly.
that lost, honestly, that's probably why they had those coconut boats on the first daily or the eras. invitational
Y-
so that they would get rid of all the people that can't paddle.
Yeah, exactly. Though that would have been hilarious to see them having to do that in a pooch.
But then we see Bananas is the first person that gets to the third checkpoint,
Yep.
and this is where we see most people struggling. They basically have to, I didn't really understand it at first when I was
I
watching it.
didn't really either.
So I think it was like they had challenge seasons under the coconuts or
Yeah,
whatever they want to call those giant coconuts. And then they had to match everything with a letter. So they would have to run back and forth and say like vendettas is letter M or
right.
whatever. And then that's how they finished it. What did you think about that?
Um, I guess the thing that really stuck out to me here, like you said, I didn't really get what how the challenge was going on. We see some players move on. The thing that really stuck out to me is that we just never got it really in 38 because her and Jack went home. And then in 39, she didn't pull the mace. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, it ended up being in a mini final and not in an elimination. But we've really been building up for like the last 3 years of our challenge watching career, but to see a Michele Fitzgerald versus Laurel head to head, and we finally got it.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, but because that's a little bit toward the end of this part, but I had a couple things before we get into
Sure, go
Michelle
ahead.
versus Laurel, because I have a lot to say on that too. But we see that Jenny is struggling with her endurance, and we see even Rachel says Jenny's weaknesses are memory and endurance. And because I mean, like I know people that like you have asthma,
Yeah,
like you mentioned before, but I know a lot of people that have asthma and can
the
still,
same medication that I see Jenny taking and that Kiki was taking on World Championships, I've been taking since I was 6 months old. So
yeah, you can still train your endurance though.
yeah,
Because the way that it works, it just opens up your blood vessels so you can breathe. But
right.
if you have, and we saw she does have her inhaler, so I don't think this challenge we can necessarily blame it on the asthma.
No, I don't
I think
think it
it's,
was. I think it's just the conditions, but that's more Rachel's impression as somebody who's never lived with that condition.
hmm yeah, I think it is interesting to note though
I
that
mean,
we do see she does struggle with her endurance.
you definitely see her struggling, and that is a concern for the final. But Rachel bringing it down to having asthma brought me back to like how many teachers would just not understand your condition and say, "Oh, you're just being lazy."
Wow, I did not. Yeah, I mean, I don't have asthma,
That's
but I
what I
know,
grew up with every single time we had physical education.
did they not let you bring your inhaler?
Oh, I brought it, but I had certain teachers who just didn't want me to go and take it for 5 seconds.
Well, that's crazy.
Yep.
Um,
Welcome
but
to Canadian public education. It's not very good.
honestly, there might be a lawsuit if that happened over here.
I mean, everything's a lawsuit over there.
Can you blame us though?
Nope.
Um, but after that, we see that Kylan gets, he's the first one to be done with the memory stuff, and then Jordan kind of leaves close behind him. And we see that Jordan says, like, me or like I have more, he says, Kylan has a lot of gas in the tank, but I'm faster than him. And well, I don't doubt that if it was a straight up running competition, Jordan would probably beat Kyland.
Yeah.
I think he was just too far behind to do anything that's going to make it up. But
Yeah,
it
I'd
is worth
agree.
to know that Kylan does have a very good endurance.
But I really liked watching this because Kyland and Jordan almost remind me of a very similar player.
Yeah,
And that maybe Kyland is gonna approach this game as a newer Jordan as opposed to say a newer Bananas or a newer CT.
I can definitely see that. But I do think that Kyland also has a lot of physicality. Like I think he's um like obviously Jordan is very strong, but Jordan is more of an endurance athlete, and then
Yeah,
Kylan you can see he's very bulky as well. So he has pretty much everything. So I feel like I would compare him more to a CT because like younger CT, he was jacked, like super, super, super strong. And then also had endurance and all those things. And Kylan is very smart like CT. So I don't know. It would be interesting to see how those two would do in a final that is kind of like the world championship final, where it was
Yeah,
a lot of endurance, but then a lot of also mentals, games and puzzles.
true.
My I loved when Olivia reacted to her being done. She's like, "I'm done."
That was great.
He's like, "Are you sure?"
Yes, just run. You're not going home.
Like, knock your papers out and run.
No, give your papers to Michele, but that's a different story.
Yeah, but um,
I mean, if I was Olivia in fifth looking at Michele and Loyal, that's exactly what I'm doing.
yeah, at this point, before, because we see that Kyland wins for the males, Tori wins for the females, and we still have some people left behind at the memory game. Which I also had just something written down that Kylan and Tori are massive threats to win a final. Like
Yeah,
Tori, and Tori's always been a very good competitor, but I think this season just
she's
shows
gotten ready for this perfectly.
like, because I know a lot of people, most people don't consider her in the top Mount Rushmore females of the challenge.
Just gonna
Like I
throw this
think
out because I talked to other people about this last night. I do.
I was gonna say I feel like after this season you have to,
Yeah,
because I feel like most people consider the top four females being Laurel, Evelyn, Cara, and Camilla.
yeah.
And I think now I don't know whose spot it's gonna go or who's gonna be taken
And
off that
maybe it's
Mount Rushmore.
unpopular, but to me, I only have Loyal and Kara in that four with Tori and Ashley.
Tori and Ashley.
Yeah,
Interesting. See, I think for me, it would probably be Laurel, Cara. Um, I don't know if I would I think I would put Tori and Camilla
mm.
up there. And that might be unpopular, but I think Camilla was, at least when she was there, she was
You
a
have to
very
judge this from a competitive standpoint. You can't judge
hmm
who the contestants are outside
exactly.
of the
Yeah.
game or when they're under the influence of alcohol.
Taking everything away, just seeing her
Yeah,
purely athleticism, I think you would have to put um those girls in there. Just because I know Evelyn is one of the greatest, but I think the game that she played is very different from the game that it is now. Like I
yeah,
think the seasons that I've watched before the finals, they have just gotten progressively harder, and we've seen those girls all do very well in seasons. But not to get too off topic. Um, what else? Oh, so the memory game comes down to Michele, Laurel, Theo, Derek, and Nehemiah.
yeah,
And then, like we've talked about a little bit before this, was the Michele and Laurel going against each other has just been kind of building since Ride or Dies when their rivalry started.
yeah.
Um, and then we see that Michele is able to finally get all of the letters correct and she's able to take off. And then Laurel is because Laurel is trying to make it seem like she was just like, I quit.
Yeah.
When in reality, Laurel, you just lost because Laurel knew she was not beating Michele in the run.
I'm gonna go into something, and if my friend Spencer happens to be watching this, sorry, I'm telling a story about you, but it fits this perfectly. I have a friend that when a few months ago was
Mm-hmm.
challenging me to a game of chess.
Mm-hmm.
And the second I took his queen, he just resigned because he didn't want to lose. In my opinion, that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah,
Loyal didn't
100%.
want to be able to say Michele beat me, so she just walked off when, yes, she lost, but she also quit at the same time.
Yeah, to
So I would
me,
say it's kind of both. Michele beat Loyal, no question. At the same time, Loyal, you didn't even have the ability to finish the challenge. You didn't have TJ tell you're out.
I was
You
just gonna
just
say that. Yep.
you didn't ask medical to evaluate you for heat stroke because if someone really thought they were going to pass out or something, like I mean, all respect to anyone in that situation, None of those happened. All it was is Loyal saw Michele running, knew the run isn't as far as we probably think it is on TV. I have no chance to catch her, and bye. In my opinion, yes, no question that Michele won. We need to give Michele all the credit for that, but Loyal still quit the game. And we all know about the reputation of quitters in this show, and I would put her in that category.
Absolutely. Again, I don't understand why, if it was a production thing, why they didn't have TJ yell at Laurel for quitting.
I'm
Because
I'm guessing, and I'll talk about this at the end of the show because I have more thoughts on it that I want to say there. But I'm
mhm,
guessing that by that point they've already put TJ on an ATV and sent him to the finish line. But he should
mhm.
have done something at the finish line.
Or by the time, yeah, exactly. When he says Laurel and Nehemiah, you're
Yeah,
out or whatever, he should have said, Laurel, you quit. Like, you know how I feel about quitters,
exactly.
his speech about that. But I just want to say, because I think, like you said, Laurel's pride would not let her just say, would not let her lose. In her head, she thinks it was better to say that she quit.
And
But
specifically, I think she didn't want to lose to Michele.
exactly. And I think we all know that, like, because even, I don't know, somebody was like, oh, I think Laurel gave up. But then it cuts to a clip of her and she's still trying, like, she was still trying to continue. It's not like she just sat down and said, F this, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think all credit to Michele for beating Laurel. And Laurel, you are a sore loser and you just want to say that you quit because you already knew that you lost.
Yep.
We see that again, Laurel and Nehemiah are purged. There's no TJ speech for Laurel quitting and just not even
Nehemiah's
trying.
comment on his The Redemption House was great.
I am kind of glad we don't have a redemption house though.
I
I think
am
it
too,
should
but
be
I
like,
really expected there to be one this season.
mm-hmm,
So the fact that there isn't, I mean, I'm glad there isn't one because seeing Bananas just come back in 32 and win the season out of basically not playing, I'm
mm-hmm.
like, I good thing I didn't watch the challenge at the time, and I was
I
like,
don't think that
I
was 32.
one of them. Yeah,
I don't know.
I forget.
But no, I think you're thinking of um somebody else. I don't know if because I think in 30, because Bananas hadn't won since Rivals 3 until he won in Total Madness.
Okay, so
So
then
I think you might have
I'm thinking
been
of someone
thinking of
else
like Jordan or something.
probably.
But we get something where
But
Rachel
I'm like,
says,
that made horrible television in the challenge. It made horrible television when that happened in Survivor 38. I'm glad we
yeah.
don't have to worry about it here. But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me that even at this point, the fact that Nehemiah says that makes me almost wonder, do the players think that there might be a redemption house somewhere?
See, then I heard, because I was thinking that too, but then I heard somebody said that Nerase or Horacio was able to call Nerase or something,
Mm,
and he knew that they had sent her home.
I
So
see.
then I think they all knew that there was no redemption house.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
think this late in the game, if there were a redemption house, they would already have some sort of challenge for them to try to get a couple people back in the game. But we see Rachel say that she was really worried about Laurel because she just came off a win. Laurel, again, a lot of people think she is the greatest of all time. But she
Excuse
says,
me.
you're good. Little did we know Laurel would take care of herself. And Rachel also offers her a Rachel Fitness subscription to get her back.
I love that.
Kara talks about Laurel
And I
just,
mean, Rachel Fitness is clearly working well for Tori,
yeah,
not so
yeah.
much for Josh.
I don't know if Josh is participating.
He was online.
Oh, maybe. But Kara says that Laurel has not done a challenge with this caliber of woman, and she just did not come in shape and did not train. And Laurel did say she did not train a single bit for 40.
Yeah,
So again, not super surprised that if you're not training and everybody else is training, you're not going to do good.
exactly.
We know Theo's going into elimination, and Michele is going to have a disadvantage in the next daily.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything else there.
All right. So yeah, that's about sums it up for me. Let's move on to right after the purge. We see a great segment here that I see in our notes was the Miss Cleo segment. But I love this not only because it was just funny, but it really today, it was this afternoon on Instagram. Derek had a post about how they aren't showing him and Michele as close as they really were on the show, and I've been noticing that simply based on how close the two of them seem to be as friends. Well, and Olivia, all three of them at Challenge Mania in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
But so I've noticed like they're not really showing they're showing Derek and Ryan as together, and they're showing Michele and Olivia together, but they're not showing the four of them as this like really close friend group that if
Mm-hmm.
you meet the four of them together in real life, it's noticeable they are.
Or even
But
if you just follow them on social media
yeah,
too.
very true. Um, so I thought this segment was interesting because it at least let the players put the game down and really merge these eras together and showed how after losing a few players that maybe they're losing a player like Naya, but the Vacation Alliance could be adding a player like Kara, seeing that she doesn't like anybody in the Bananas Angels Alliance.
See, I would say the Vacation Alliance is non-existent this season anymore. It's a new alliance
Good
because
point.
the only Vacation Alliance member that's left is Tori.
I mean, we might as well just call it the Tori Alliance and the Bananas Alliance at
The
this point.
Bananas Angels and then the Devils. But
No,
moving
Amanda Garcia is not on the season.
oh, I forgot she calls herself that. For
Oh, I mean,
deliver
she was on the season, but that lasted a very short time, thank God.
30 minutes.
Yeah,
For deliberation, it was very short deliberation, and we also didn't have a club scene this time around,
yeah.
but the first thing we see in deliberation is Bananas
I
has
think we
his
saw that instead of going to the club, the players had a party in their house for the fun players and not
or
the ultra serious bananas players.
I also think that since it was a mini final, it took more of a segment than
Yeah,
just a
exactly.
regular daily. But Bananas basically puts his feet on the table and starts clipping his toenails and throwing them at people.
And leads me back to what I said is my theme of the episode. Johnny, just grow the F up.
If I was sitting down and somebody threw a toenail at me, like I don't know why people clip their toenails anywhere other than the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, ugh. Jordan says that he thinks that behind all the nose hair clipping and beard trimming, toenails, there's a hurt banana deep down. I don't know about that.
That was good.
Bananas again doesn't even try to have a conversation. He knows he's going in. And I think we did see a little bit after the deliberation too that well, I guess Bananas walks out of the deliberation. He doesn't care enough to have a conversation. But even Tori's saying, like, how do you know I'm not putting in Jordan or whatever? Everybody knows, Tori,
Yeah,
you are not putting in Jordan. We've seen that. World Championships was the big battle of that.
I saw something online this week that it was kind of funny though that it's just like whether it be Tori or be Loyal or be Nuis, with so many players of both genders having such a hard time navigating past relationships on this show, how
Hmm.
does Jordan do it? That all his exes just want him to go to the final and take money from everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. And it does seem that like Lor or Jordan and his new relationship, they're very secure with each other
Yeah,
and there's no like I've seen Tori commenting on her pictures. Like it looks like there's a very healthy dynamic there.
it does.
And that's very mature. If that were me, I don't think that would be the case. I don't really understand the whole friends with your ex type of thing because clearly they're, and we saw in Red or Dies, like she was very hurt after the
Yeah.
relationship, and I applaud them for being so mature, but I don't think I could that could ever be me.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And if I
Um,
was the girlfriend, I would be pissed.
I think the unique thing about them being players in the challenge together is it's the one place in life that even if you, and for only what, 100 people in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody that we see as part of that very small group, like your chance of being a regular on the challenge is smaller than your chance of being elected to the US Senate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that really is what makes it work, is that they almost at some point, even when the relationship went completely backwards and
Mm-hmm.
they broke up as an engaged couple, they know that they're going to have to live with each other at some point unless they decide they don't want to do this show. And both of them love nothing more than winning the challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's like again, obviously I'm not in that situation, but I just personally I feel like I don't have that level of maturity to be able to do that, and I don't know if I ever will in my
Yeah,
life.
fair.
But I do applaud their friendship, and I applaud also Jordan's girlfriend back home being like very secure in her relationship and knowing that, because obviously for her to be content and okay with her boyfriend going and living with a girl that he was engaged to, they have to have a lot of trust in their
Yeah.
relationship, which I really appreciate. But
And
yeah, I
well, we
don't,
mentioned Jordan's girlfriend because this is not as put out there as he is, but Tori's boyfriend probably is in the same position
yeah. And I
because
know,
we've seen some subdued hints that she's in a relationship at the reunion show recently.
mm-hmm.
And from what I've heard online, Tori's significant other lives in the Netherlands. So that was a perfect spot for the reunion show for her.
Oh, really? I didn't
Yeah.
know that. That's interesting. But yeah, I don't have anything else if you do, unless you want to go to elimination.
Um, no, yeah, we can pretty much just go into elimination. I think we've covered everything from there. So just to go over the elimination, basically each player has to put steel rods through a tube that will therefore make it harder to transmit yourself through. And we start at a 1 minute interval, meaning both players have to get through the tube within 1 minute in order to
And they
continue.
get 8 polls before
Exactly.
to
Good point.
start. Yep.
They get 8 polls to start, and then assuming both players get through, they'll alternate in turns of playing a game of high-low with TJ. And which, for those of you who don't know what high-low is, you basically have to, TJ will show a code and you have to predict whether the next code is higher or lower. We saw this with Melissa in the final of Vendettas.
Yeah.
Um, and also with Bananas at that point in time.
Yeah. I like this. I like the concept of
Yeah,
this elimination. I really liked the having to get through and everything, but I do wish that the it didn't just come down to luck for the amount of polls that are going in. Like, I think
makes
the
sense.
card game makes it so it's just purely based on luck
Mm.
instead of it being based on something that you have control over. Or I would have also just liked to see, even if they didn't play that high-low game, and just each time they both add polls and then just make it a race to
And
the
keep
end, basically.
see who tires out first.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Um, I found that I would like to see this elimination be repeated. I would also like to maybe see it where it's not just two giant guys going. I don't think that that's the intention they necessarily had, because it
Mm-hmm.
would have been much more of a, say, endurance challenge if we got like Kara and Aviv competing in this together, who probably could have both done the 30-second interval far easier than these two.
Or somebody like Jordan, I think,
Yeah,
even with his
absolutely.
disability, he would still
Would be fine.
probably crush that. Yeah. Yeah, again, I really like the concept of it. I just there was a part of me that was like, because when there's like an elimination, I want to see it be purely based on the people in the stand and the competitors. Like, I don't really like when the audience starts yelling and helping,
Yeah.
and I don't like when
Thankfully, we've got out of that this season more than most seasons.
yeah,
And
for
I think
sure.
a lot of that has to do with the quality of the players in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember in Ride or Dies when the whole crowd was sabotaging Michele and
Yeah,
Jay, and just little, and then people also claim that because you hear on the camera that the audience is helping, then they didn't deserve the win, when in reality, like, that's not even the case most of the time. But I think I for me, eliminations, I want it to be purely just based off the two people in the stand going head to head against each other, and I want it to the result to be something that was fully in the control of the person in the sand.
that
And I
makes
think the
sense.
card game just kind of added that randomness to it.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I still think even if they didn't have the card game, Banana still would have won. And I mean, we saw Theo's size as a huge disadvantage.
yeah.
He just is a
I
lot
mean,
broader, a
he's
lot longer.
6'7".
Yeah. Um, and then he's just also has broader shoulders than Bananas does. And also, if you see the clip of Bananas next to Theo, Bananas looks super small.
Yeah,
Like, I didn't realize he was that short. He's definitely like 5'10". I don't know. I
yeah.
just always thought he would be taller than that. Um, and then we see Bananas winning the elimination. Do you have anything just based off their competition there?
You mostly covered it. I think you're right. There's some tweaks they could make. It was a good elimination in the long run. I like seeing it play out. Um, but I do think the reason that it shut down after we dropped it from the minute to the 30-second ratio, and I don't know why they didn't maybe go to 45 seconds first.
Mm-hmm.
That would have just made it a lot more of an endurance challenge instead of just cutting the time in half and then it being over just like that. Um, but I think that it was maybe just not the best challenge to have with these two of the biggest guys on your show,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to maybe some if we could have had done it with some more nimble players who do yoga and would have been a lot more interesting to watch.
Yeah, and like you said, like I really want them to bring this back, but I, like you just mentioned, just tweak it a little bit, and maybe we could see it be more interesting than just like, oh crap, Bananas got it again, or
Yeah,
which they didn't, I think, tie it up right at the end, which made it nice. So again, I don't know if the card thing did much of a difference there. But then we see when Josh is cheering for Bananas, Michele and Olivia are cheering for Theo. Josh and Michele kind of get at it a little bit
yes,
because
they do.
Michele realizes that if Bananas wins, she is 100% going to be a target. They have been targeting each other the last few episodes. And Michele has a really good point. Like, you cheering for him is cheering for me to be a target, basically.
Yeah,
Do you have anything else before we move on to targets?
I do. Once again, we see another situation where Josh is just cheering for pretty much everybody and not wanting to take people off. I don't understand casting's decision in this. Maybe they didn't know how bad he was going to do. Maybe they wanted to bring the Big Brother audience in. But we just had a season called Battle for a New Champion, which seemed, at least at the time, to be a qualifier for this season. And
Mm-hmm.
Emmanuel says he didn't even get a call, um, which I don't get. I'm glad Jay's not there because every time Jay plays, he interferes with Michele's game and she's kind of tied to him and can't do anything on her own. But Jay was an alternate, yet somehow Josh is on the season who
No, I think Fessy
does.
was the alternate.
Oh, Fessy was the alternate. Okay, that makes more sense. But the Fessy, that's another great name that probably could have added more to this team. Um, Turbo didn't get a call. He would have caused so much drama in this team and with all three other eras.
And Turbo's somebody that can back it up.
Yeah,
He won, he was a solo winner of what's been said to be the hardest final that the challenge has ever had. That's what
exactly.
they've said. So I
So
mean, I
I don't
agree.
really know why Josh is even here if he doesn't want to play the game. I
See,
mean,
I
if he
think,
wants to align with Bananas and I'd rather him align with Michele, fine, that's his decision. He's in the game. But then just align with Bananas team. Don't constantly be flipping back and forth like you're playing New Era Survivor when you're in the challenge.
yeah, and I think, you know what I think? I think that Josh is almost like, sorry for saying this, he's like a production's wet dream. I
Yeah,
saw somebody say that on Twitter because they make him look so stupid and he is just coming back every
every
single time.
single week.
They portray him to be the biggest goof. Remember CT used to call him that?
Yep.
They portray him to be so messy and like the worst.
And he keeps giving it to them.
And he keeps coming back and he still is, because I feel like if I were on a show and they were showing me negatively, I would be like, no, I'm not coming back.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
he loves playing the challenge and he loves to keep coming back. But again, I do think that his spot, there's other people that could have probably gone to. Like I think somebody like Fessy um would deserve that more. I mean, I'm not saying making a final is should be a deciding factor on if you get casted or not, but we've seen Fessy, he had only lost one elimination and it was when he was partnered with Mariah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, pretty interesting. But for our targets, Banana says those girls over here.
Once again, it draws me back to the same theme. Bananas, just grow up. Why is he asking for volunteers only for Rachel, Aviv, and Jenny to volunteer? Obviously, just playing into his games, only for him to then be like, oh, Michelle, Olivia, and Kara. Like, we all know what you're going to do. I've seen this before.
Yeah, I think even a blind man could tell you who he would choose.
Yeah.
So I agree. He definitely needs to grow up. But for our player of the week segment, unless you have anything else
Nope,
until I
I'm
move
good to
into
go in
that,
the.
basically this is the player that we think had the best showing or who just did something that we think was a highlight of the episode, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we do the opposite for our loser of the week. And today or this week for my male player of the week, I chose Jordan,
Nice.
even though he was a target, just because we haven't seen Jordan go into elimination.
Yeah.
And I think Jordan is so well connected, even with the Banana Angel people, because all those girls would love to be partnered with Jordan in a final if it came down to that. And Jordan is somebody that, even if he does go into elimination, he's probably coming back.
Yeah.
Like the eliminations that we've seen Jordan lose, it's not many. And
No.
it was balls in against Audacio and Ride or Dies. Um, we've saw him lose when he was partnered with Anissa, which whatever. And we saw him lose in a pole wrestle to Fessy, but pretty much any other elimination, Jordan is probably going to win. And I think somebody like Bananas, even though he has a lot of experience and he has a high elimination record, or he has a lot of elimination wins, he still has a lot of losses. And we've
Yeah.
seen Bananas go home in eliminations where he like Bananas does get eliminated often. He isn't, I mean, he's still good at eliminations, but I would rather take Jordan in any elimination. So I think people know that he's a really good player. And even if he is nominated, he's probably not going to go in unless it's between him and Johnny. And we've already seen three people get targeted. So I just think he's in a really good spot for the week.
Makes sense. I completely agree with that. Though I do have another name. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
why is my friend calling me? Maybe he's envisioning this podcast live. The guy I just called the Quidu that plays chess just decides to call me in the middle of the podcast.
Oh, I wonder if
Probably
he's going
so.
to listen to it.
Probably not. He doesn't follow reality television. He follows reality television that's called the Trump campaign, but that's a different story.
Okay,
um,
so who's your male of the week?
Mail it a week, and then I want to go into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just realized that I forgot one point to put on my notes. But mail of the week, I'm going to give to Kylan. That mini final was so impressive, especially for an Era 4 player who I don't think has ever done one of these.
No, he didn't.
As a
They did do a
They
mini
did
final.
one there, but not as like an individual.
Mm-hmm.
They were
Yeah.
running the mini final in teams on 39.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. He just absolutely crushed it.
Yeah. So I mean, what can I say more? What I wanted to get into just before we go into um female players of the week and losers players of the week
Mm-hmm.
is karma votes. We haven't really talked about them this time, but this one I thought was relatively noteworthy. Did you catch in the way I did that Loyal gives Michele a 2 and everybody else a 1?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they didn't show all of her karma votes,
Yeah,
but she gave Bananas a 1.
yeah. So
Her and
some
Bananas are supposed to be BFF, super tight, we love each other type of thing. And I don't know
and she
what,
gave Michele a higher karma vote than Bananas, which
yeah.
I don't know what any of this is going to mean. It could fizzle out to be like fire tokens in Survivor 40. It could be really important, but I mean, it's noteworthy that maybe there was more that we didn't see with her and Bananas that would
I
cause her to have this view when she goes home.
I honestly think nothing happened. I think she's just bitter. And I think she's the type of person that, like, if it can't be me, it's not going to be you either. So, because she worked with Bananas and she's out of the game, she's kind of like, if I can't win, I'm not going to help you win either.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's just the type of person that she
I
is.
could see that. All right, so let's move into our players of the week for females. Do you want to go
Mm-hmm.
first or do you want me to?
Yeah, I want to go first, and I'm gonna say Tori,
Yeah.
because of how she performed in the daily. And again, we already talked about how she's definitely one of the Mount Rushmore people, in my opinion. Her endurance is great. Her ability to do well in things that maybe aren't her, like, even if you don't know Tori as a puzzle queen, she still is really good at pretty much everything. And again,
Yeah,
in that same boat as people like Bananas, who are just good at doing things that you don't even train for
exactly.
and you wouldn't know to train for. So definitely goes to Tori, in my opinion.
I'm gonna say that that's a great pick. I'm gonna give mine player of the week this week for women to Aviv. Um, she didn't necessarily win the daily the way Tori did, and Tori's daily win was so impressive. But to both be injured and still come in the middle when the whole episode at the beginning looks like she's set to go home, and
Mm-hmm.
you know it's a purge because of the preview, and she's already talking, and you're going, okay, this is Aviv's exit, and she beats Olivia and beats Michele and beats Loyal, and those names of three women are not to be taken lightly in this game.
And she was right next to Kara too.
Yeah, exactly. Right next to Kara. And then we get a lot of content from Aviv too, where she's really strategically thinking about how to move forward and get to the end. So I'm going to throw my player of the week for women to her this week.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. And we also see how she was able to work, like, still do really good with an injury. And it kind of reminds me of when the Dirty 30 final, when Jordan, the first thing they did was skydive, and Jordan, like, tore his ACL, still went to win. And Aviv is giving that same energy from watching her. She's somebody that's never going to quit. And even with something like an injury, she's still a contender to win the daily and the final and whatever. So I would definitely agree with that point.
All right, so moving on to our losers of the week. Feel free to start wherever you like.
For my male, I'm gonna have to give it to Theo,
Okay.
because in this one, I'm not saying he was horrible or anything. I just had to pick somebody, and he was the one I had to pick. His performance in the mini final, and I talked about this last week too, but he has the athleticism. He's an Olympian. You would think if there's a mini final where you're doing running, paddle boarding, digging, things like that, he would be the contender to win.
Yeah.
And I just don't think I think this season it probably caught him off guard to find Olivia. And obviously, we know they have a beautiful relationship outside of the show now.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he was, like, checked in mentally this season. And that's why I think his performance in the final or the mini final, and even though he was at a disadvantage in the elimination, he still lost. So I would have to give it to Theo.
Good decision. Um, I think I'm gonna go with a different name here. So this is odd. So far we've been picking all different names, but
I try to
in
pick when you sent me yours, I try to pick different ones just so we
fair,
have other or different people to talk about too.
in terms of The so we this isn't a week that we saw two men go home, Theo and Nehemiah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to pick either one of them because I think Theo was at a disadvantage. He was against a great challenger who's good at doing really bizarre
Stupid shit.
eliminations.
Yep. Stupid
Exactly.
shit. Mm-hmm.
And then he, even being 6'7", he gave Bananas a good run for his money.
Mm-hmm.
Nehemiah, same kind of thing. He tried his best in the daily. It was in horrible conditions, and it just didn't work out for him. In contrast, there's more to this game than just physical, despite what some people in the online community don't seem to say. And my question is, what is Josh even doing here? So Josh is my loser of the week. I don't think he knows what alliance he's working with. We see him work socializing with Tori's alliance, and then the next thing later cheering for Banana's alliance. He seems to want to be friends with everybody, which is going to want have him work with nobody. And I mean, I guess it's a women's elimination next, but I can't figure out why both alliances don't just decide, well, let's just put Josh as a target because who knows when we get to the end of the game, and we all know crazy votes happen late in the game. Look at last season with Olivia and Luis. Do you want to run the risk of giving Josh power 1 week before the final? Absolutely not. So
Yeah.
it's time for him to go.
And I want to reiterate that by me naming Theo of the loser of the week, I don't think obviously there's no more weak links here.
Yeah,
They're all
no
gone.
question.
He's still a great competitor. I was just trying to find a different person than Brett did. But I 100% agree with you because Josh, and this is why he's never made a final, and we'll have to see how he does this season. But if his track record shows anything, he is such a messy player that when push comes to shove at the end of the game, he is an easy person to get rid of because he's probably done you wrong already, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like, and I agree with you. His political game is so messy that at this point it's like you're working with the whole house and he hasn't won a daily yet, so that's probably why he hasn't been as exposed, even though he has been exposed a few times. But he's never been in a position of power where he had to pick who he's going to save or who he's not going to save. And I don't know who he would pick if he had to, because we know he's friends with Rachel. We know he's friends with Michele, Olivia, like Tori. He's friends with the whole entire house.
just
So,
a guess, but after what we quickly saw here, I I don't know where Kara sits exactly if she's up for elimination next week, but I'm just gonna guess that Josh will end up being a target if Michele or Olivia come back.
oh yeah, because if you
Because I
think
don't
about
think
it,
either one of them wants to trust him at this point.
Nehemiah is gone.
Yeah.
And I think, didn't Michele say something about like people wanted me to pick Josh, but I didn't?
Yeah.
I think I heard that. So I don't know if it was in the preview or something, but I think that because we know Olivia and Michele are both playing the same game, if that makes any sense. But I think that he is going to be the next person to be nominated out of their group because they know that he's working with the whole house. There's nobody who's coming after him.
Yeah,
Um,
very true.
but for my female, I am going to have to give this to Laurel.
We agree. There's no I mean,
Yeah, when you sent me that, I
go
was like,
ahead.
there's no way for me to
Yeah.
pick another person. Her performance in the mini final was lackluster at best. At this point in the season, even if you didn't train before the season, you see everybody working out in most clips. You know
Yeah.
that people are working out every day. Why aren't you on the treadmill? Um, her performance was really bad. And then what really put the nail in the coffin for me was her saying that she quit because, oh, I can't do this anymore. Oh, I have heat stroke. But then we see her waving her hands in the back of a car.
Yeah.
So clearly you didn't have heat stroke. But yeah,
Michele
just
had heat stroke 2 weeks ago.
yeah, we saw the heat stroke, the paramedics and everything.
Yeah.
Just her saying that because she knew she was gonna get last, she said, "Oh, I'm just gonna quit," instead of being a competitor and being a challenger, especially for a champion. Come on. Like I expect this behavior from other people. I did not expect it from her.
Yeah, absolutely. You said everything I was gonna say, so I guess I'll just wrap up the episode this way. TJ didn't do it. Laurel, hope to see you never.
Yeah, Laurel, TJ hates quitters. You know that you've been around long enough that you've seen people quit. And the way also, it reminds me of the free agents final when she was like screaming at Zach, like, don't quit, no,
Yeah.
no. But it's like then you're just like, meh, I'm done. Like, what? I don't know.
Anyway, that was great. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back next week. We're getting so close to the final at this point that it's just around the corner. I
How
cannot
many
wait to.
people do we have left?
We have um era one, Rachel.
Rachel,
Era two, Bananas. Kara,
Aviv,
Aviv.
no, no, Laurel.
No Loyal. So that's four. Era three, Jordan, Tori, Corey.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, we missed Derek
yeah,
C.
we missed Eric C. That's
So
right.
that's four each.
Four.
Derek's. Yeah, and
And
then
then
for era four we have
Michelle, Olivia, um,
uh-huh
Kylan.
Kyland. So what is that? That's did we miss somebody?
I'm gonna check in online just to see.
I'm gonna write it down. Sorry, guys. So one we have Rachel. Two we have Banana, um, Aviv, Kara, and then Derek.
I've got the cast list right here.
Three we have Corey, Jordan, Tori, and then four.
We missed Jenny. That's who we missed
Oh,
in four. But yeah, we're at 12 people left. So the
well,
fun.
is there an odd number though, or no?
No, six guys, six girls.
No, there's seven girls. Rachel, Aviv, Kara, Tori, four, Jenny's five, Olivia,
Oh,
Michele.
yeah, you're right. You're right.
So,
So next we're at 13. Next week we'll be down to 12.
and then, because usually in the last few finals, we've seen that there's four people that go into the final, four
Yeah,
males, four females. So, yeah, I don't know. And there's probably going to be a double elimination coming up
I would
sometime. We've always
imagine at
seen
some
those
point if
in
we
toward the
just
end.
look at the calendar, we get down to 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So we probably have about four more episodes, including a double elimination, and then 2 weeks of the final. And then that takes us to potentially have a winner 1 week before Christmas Day. I would
Wow, that's pretty
I don't know
crazy.
if they're gonna air the reunion on Christmas or if they're gonna air the reunion maybe the week after Christmas for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But I would
Yeah,
imagine the reunion would just flop if it was aired in the middle of Christmas.
yeah, I agree. But yeah,
So
it's
we'll see.
really getting down to it. Thank you everybody for listening. We're obviously going to be back next week to chat. Do you have anything else?
No, that's all great and ready to. I always feel free, of course. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Send us any questions you have, any topics you want us to discuss. We'd love to hear from you all.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you. Oh, I need to hit